Hey everybody! Welcome to Growing Southern. My name is Erin, and today I'm going to show you how I plan to organize my seeds for 2021. I went, well, some may say overboard. I say I was excited about seeds this year and bought a lot, and then got overwhelmed by the amount of organization that it was going to take to figure out how to plant them. But I've really been working on finding a system that works for me, and I think that I've found a great way to keep me organized this year and sort of marries digital and physical. So I'm going to show you my process today on this video, and I hope that it helps you when you set out to organize your seeds. So let's get started. So step one is figure out your garden layout. And the reason this is step one is simply because you can't organize your seeds until you figure out what seeds you want to buy. So you could go about this one of two ways. The first would be buy your seeds and then figure out what your garden layout is going to be. The second way would be to lay out your garden and then purchase the seeds that you need. I did a combination of the two, and it actually worked out really well. So I did a loose layout of what I thought I would want my garden to be and what plants I was thinking I wanted to plant. I then went to buy the seeds, and then inevitably you're gonna be on the seed website and see things that you didn't know were out there that look really cool, and you're gonna buy them. So then when you make your final plan, you obviously are gonna use the seeds that you ultimately bought to lay out your garden. So that is step one, lay out your garden beds. Step two, determine the date of last frost. This is the piece of information on which your entire seed planting schedule rests, and it's not an exact science. I am sorry to tell you. So I know you're wondering, what is a frost date? Well, here it is. A frost date is the average date of the first or last light freeze that occurs in the spring or fall. Let's say you put out your little tender basil seedlings. The day after you put them out in the morning, temperatures dip such that you have a light frost. Often seedlings cannot withstand temperatures that low and they'll die. A tragic death. You just want to be sure that when you're putting your seedlings out, you want to be confident that they aren't going to freeze. You can find the date of last frost online, and I will link to a resource below for you to find the last frost date for your zip code. Step three is to create dividers based off your last frost date. So I took this old diaper pail from when Ian was in diapers. Thankfully, he's no longer in diapers. I couldn't be happier. And I realized that these little spaces are pretty much the same size as my seed packets. So using leftover cardstock that I had, and starting from 10 weeks out from our last frost date, I created basically like file dividers. So I have my date range, and then that it's 10 weeks out from last frost. And then I have that for every week going to 1 week before my last frost. And then I do need to make one more that says basically direct sow, which means you plant it in the ground outside and you don't need to start it indoors. So step four is to begin organizing your seedlings. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your seed packet. This is an Ashe County pimento, and you're going to look at the back, and it will tell you how far before the last frost date can you begin sowing these indoors. So this says sow indoors 8 to 10 weeks before last frost. The next thing I want to find out is how many of these plants do I have in my garden. So I have 2 of these slated to plant in my garden this year. And then finally, I want to say, do I want to do succession planting? So succession planting is basically that instead of laying all of your seed out at once, which means they'll all become ripe at once, you stagger when you plant so they have different maturity dates and you don't get inundated with a crop. So what I plan to do for these seeds is I have 2 plants in my garden. And I think what I will do is over the course of 3 weeks, so 10 weeks before last frost, 9 weeks before last frost, 8 weeks before last frost, I will plant 2 or 3 seedlings. That means I will have some extra plants, which I can give away or really, it's more of an insurance policy against some of them like possibly dying or not working out. So I've planted them a few times, and I'll be able to take the strongest plants and ultimately put those plants in my garden. So those pieces of information, weeks out from last frost to begin planting, how many are in my garden, and whether I want to do succession planting, I'm going to add all of that information onto this top level of my seed packet. So I'm going to do that and show you what it's going to look like for me. What I'm going to write on every seed packet is how far out I can begin to plant these indoors, how many total plants I have in my final garden plan, and then if I plan to do succession planting, how many seedlings I want to plant each time. So as I mentioned, I'm going to start planting these early, 10 weeks out. So I will put these behind my 10-week divider card. And then when I pull this out next week to begin planting them, after I've planted my 3 seedlings, I will cross off that circle, and then I will move this seed packet to behind 9 weeks so that when I do my work at the 9-week mark, this seed packet will be there. I will then pull out the packet, plant my 3 seedlings, cross off the circle, and then I'll do that until I'm done. It's going to be a lot of work to label all these seed packets, but it'll be really helpful and worth it because I don't like being overwhelmed. And so anything I can do to avoid being overwhelmed, I'm always willing to do it. And finally, step 5 is to wait for the planting season to begin. And during this waiting period, it's a great time to get all of your seed starting supplies for the year. And there are so many different ways to go about this, and you can go as elaborate as possible. Like this year, I bought grow lights, I brought some seedling trays, but you can also do it without spending any money at all. And as long as you have a sunny window, you can start your seeds there. That's what I've done in the past, and it worked really well. Be creative, don't put too much pressure on yourself, and remember that if your seedlings don't work, that's okay. We can get our plants from the nursery in the spring, and it will still be just fine. Think of it as an experiment, and don't put too much pressure on yourself to get it just right. Just throw some seeds in the dirt and see what happens. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I can't wait to see you next week, and if you're planning on starting your own seeds, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below or on Instagram @Growing Southern. I'll see you guys soon.